Online for Authors. I'm chatting with Michael Stockham, author of Jake Fox, Ties That Bind. Welcome, Michael.
It's a blessing to be with you, and I look forward to the conversation.
I do as well. I really enjoyed your book, but before we kind of dive in and get into the nitty-gritties, can you give my listeners like a quick idea of what they're going to find when they open up the cover of Jake Fox, Ties That Bind?
Absolutely. The main thrust behind the book is essentially a redemption story. It's a big-time lawyer who, through a personal tragedy, decides to go to his small hometown to run a small town practice, and suddenly gets thrown into defending a juvenile who's accused of murdering her father.
Yeah, and it is a fast-paced story, and I loved it from the beginning. I want to know what made you decide thriller, that's what I'm going to write.
Two things. So Jake Fox, Ties That Bind is actually the second book that I've written. The first one was Confessions of an Accidental Lawyer, which is somewhat based on historical events in my own life. Mm-hmm. A trial I did for a prisoner in a civil rights case, and then my wife and my struggle for our second child as IVF. And the difficulty with that is that you want to be true to the history, but you want to be an artist as well. And that's a very difficult line to run. So a thriller, a legal thriller, which I was comfortable with, but something that was completely unmoored from having to be honest, was really attractive. And so that's one of the main impetus. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand that because I have a couple of books that have some like real life in it. But I tell everyone, I take a lot of license. And you have to wonder, like at what point can you and should you? So I understand that feeling of just saying, whoo, this is fun. We're just going to go for it. Let's tell the listeners a little bit about your character, Jake Fox. Where did he come from? Is he someone you know? Is he a conglomeration of people?
All the characters are sort of an amalgamation of people that I've met over my career, especially the lawyers. Yeah. Jake Fox is a sort of a patchwork, if you will, of a lot of young lawyers that I grew up with that are struggling through their 40s and 50s. Hitch Miller, who's another character in the book, who's sort of the irascible old lawyer, is an amalgamation of my mentors. Okay. Those big time Houston lawyers with their braggadocio and the way they ran their practice. So the people I've met and the actual emotions or verbiage or things that have been said, those work their way into the book. Yeah. And that's kind of the inspiration. But the main focus is characters, because I think character-driven fiction is one of the most key components of a good book that people relate to. Mm-hmm. Plot-driven books are fun. I read a lot of them, but they get you from A to B, but they don't leave you with the wonder of, well, what happened to those characters after the final chapter? Right. And that's something that intrigues me.
So that's something I was going to bring up, because thrillers are usually very plot-driven, page-turner, fast, and you have that. But you also really balanced it well with character development. And I loved that because I am very much a character-driven author and reader. That's what I love, is to fall into a character. So how did you balance that? Because when you're writing a thriller, people expect a thrill. I mean, that's what they're expecting. They want to get in there and they want it to be a crazy ride, which you did. But you managed to also have these amazing characters. How did you do it?
The thriller component in a lot of ways is sort of almost like a roller coaster structure. There are marks you need to hit. It's a genre, so you can find the marks you need to hit, the plot points that you need to, or not necessarily points, but the energy that you have to hit at different times of the book, and you can kind of diagnose that. And then I try to drive some of that through style. They're very short chapters. I think if there's any passive voice in the book, it might be less than 2%. So it's all short, clear, declarative, fast-moving language to drive the thriller pace. And then the the most fun component of writing a thriller or books is to actually draw out what happens to the characters and how they feel, because oftentimes their reactions and how they deal with it as a human being are some of the most creative and most rewarding parts of writing the book.
Absolutely. When you were writing Rose, so Rose is a teenage girl,
right?
How difficult was that? You know, you're obviously not a teenage girl. And so how difficult was that to be an adult man writing from a teenage girl's perspective?
Little difficult at times, right? You're out of your persona as a person, as who I live my daily life. I've been blessed to raise 2 daughters. So I made it through the psychological warfare of middle school and all of high school. Yeah. So to a certain extent, I understand those I mean, I don't necessarily always relate to it, because men and women are fundamentally different in how they view the world, but I've observed it. I've been frustrated by it numerous times. So I was able to kind of understand, or at least think, like, how would my daughter Peyton or my daughter Cormac react to this? And it was from there, it became a little easier.
Right.
Easier. Yes, ma'am.
Right. A lot of people say, you know, like, write what you know. And they also suggest that you don't try to write from a character's point of view that isn't like you. And I don't believe that that's something that we need to do. Write what you know, I mean, to an extent, but nobody wants to read about a middle-aged woman who, you know, lives on the beach. It's not a fun, right? And so I think that this idea of, like you said, you have daughters, so you observed and you said, okay, my daughter, I might not understand why my daughter would say or do this, but this is what my daughter would say or do. And then you can extrapolate that and put it with your new characters. So that was great. I want to know a little bit more about the thriller aspect, because that's not something that I write. I am so character driven.
Sure.
that I'm often accused and have to go back and make a lot of changes because they say I wander in the woods. So I'm just wandering around and I'm having fun because I'm very much a pantser. So it's like whatever comes to me and then I write it. You, I think, must do a little bit of plotting because you were talking about the form.
100%.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. What does the plotting look like for you?
So on the first book, Confessions of an Accidental Lawyer, very much a little bit of an evolution. It was much more of a pantser type dynamic. Mm-hmm. It originally started off with a business coach in trying to put together a foundation of 2 stories that could form the basis of sort of a speaking career, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then she came up with this wild idea. She said, well, let's put them together as one novel, and we'll just interlace the stories together, and we'll make something fiction out of it, something character driven. And so that was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of wheels off, you know, rewriting, trying to make things fit together. And that was very somewhat, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but inefficient. I am a practicing lawyer. So for about the past 25 years, I've been at a big law firm, Holland and Knight. So I don't have days to just wander in the woods.
Right.
I have to use, if I want to do something artistic, I have to make the time count. So on Jake Fox, Ties That Blind, we started plotting a lot more, putting out much more of almost an outline, if you will. And then on the sequel, which we're well into completing, Don't Forsake Me, that one, I actually have each chapter, I have about, it's sort of a paragraph outline.
Okay.
And that's been very helpful to actually put out. Now, it is shifted as you go through it. You'd be like, well, we need a chapter here, or we haven't heard from these characters for a while or stuff. So it's fluid, but not. Right. It gives you some rigidity. And it also makes it, I think, efficient and bite-sized.
Okay.
There are a lot of would-be novelists out there that just, when you think about writing a manuscript, and a manuscript for a book can be 300-400 pages in regular type font, it's a huge project.
Right.
But by outlining and putting it into bite sizes, you can really make it achievable because now it's only, okay, I made the plot, I have the outline. All I have to do today is figure out how to make this paragraph description into 1,200 words. And so it becomes achievable almost. You know, how do you eat an elephant? One
bite at a time. Right. Right.
That's the way you do it.
All right. Yes. So for me, I have tried several different plotting methods, and I am obviously a very right-brained writer, and left brain jumps in to plot, and my right brain doesn't like anything that my left brain has suggested. And it's been a very frustrating journey for me. So I tell everyone what I really do is I outline on the other end. So I get my story out of my head, and then I have to go back through and say, okay, it's too slow here. It moved too fast here. I didn't hear from this character. And so I do a lot of come back in and the editing process. No one would ever be allowed to see my first draft because it is really terrible.
Well, that's all right. We all bury drafts in drawers.
Yeah, they're not pretty. I think a lot of people assume that it's a faster process. Like I'm asked all the time, well, how long did it take you to write that novel? And it's like, that's such a hard question because you don't work on it every day. And some days you work on it for hours and hours, and other days you have 10 minutes that you've thrown something into it. And are you talking about the writing only? Or are you talking about the writing and the editing? Or are you then talking about the writing, the editing, the formatting, all of the other stuff that goes into getting the book ready to go? I mean, it's a whole process. What did you find to be the most difficult portion of taking the book from your head to in someone's hands?
For me, the most difficult portion is just the impetus to move it forward. And it's not, a lot of people, you know, there's a sort of the classic freeze up at a white page.
Yeah.
There's just, for me, my time is so in demand just from a profession and then being a father and a husband and other stuff that sometimes you're just tired when you sit down.
Yeah.
And you just don't necessarily feel the energy. I don't think it's that I don't want to do it. It's just that you're tired at the moment. But generally, about 5 or 10 minutes in, it's the characters that inspire you to get forward, to start playing with them and thinking about what they're seeing and other stuff. And then, you know, once you get moving with a little momentum, 10 minutes turns to 2 hours, and then you're very pleased with yourself. It's good to do the project because you feel successful.
Yeah. I agree with you that my characters sometimes I feel like are talking to me.
Yes.
You know, I'll be doing something else. I don't know. I'm, you know, in the kitchen, I'm doing something, and all of a sudden it's like, I feel like they're right here and they're telling me something. And it's like, oh, I've got to go get that written down. Like I love it when that is the process. It's 100%. Hard. It's harder when you sit down and you're like, I need to write something today, you know, but it's a whole lot better when the character has been kind of chatting in your ear all day. And now you can't wait to sit down so you can get all of that out on paper.
100%. And I think part of it is just embracing, like if you're a creative person and a lot of creatives our age, like I'm 56, there are a lot of people that were creative when they were younger and they journaled or they went to college to get an art degree, or they were, you know, in their teens and 20s, they were very, very artistic type people. And they've sort of, they've done what life does to all of us, right? Yeah. Rent, food, children. I mean, they got caught up in a lot of stuff, but there's always a component, especially with somebody that wants to create. There's a niggling, there's a uneasiness at not touching that thing that's very important to you. And so I think you have to embrace that. I mean, if you have tried to walk away from writing 1,000 times and been like, oh, well, that's something I did as a young man or a young woman, and then you find yourself writing on an airplane or something else, then you need to actually confess that you want to do this and start doing it. And
then find a way to get started on that process. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. Do you write every day?
When I'm When I'm most pleased with myself, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. When I'm most frustrated, it's, life has gotten in the way and it's difficult. But yeah, writing every day, and that's part of the process I set up for myself with the plotting and whatnot, is trying to break it into something that can be accomplished in 90 minutes a day.
Okay.
So it's still a chunk of time. It's still time I have to find, but it's not the overwhelming feeling you had in high school where you had a term paper due on Monday and it was noon on Sunday and you haven't been to the library yet. If people even go to a library anymore, I don't know.
I don't even know. I think they probably do it all online, I suspect,
so
right?
Yeah.
So you talked about some creatives when they were younger. Did you want to be an author younger, or was this something that came about later in life?
Oh, 100%. I am, and the title of my first book is not by accident. I am an accidental lawyer. I am a late bloomer. So I did not get my law license. I did not, I graduated Cornell in 2002.
Okay.
And so I was 32 years old. So I spent a long time from the age of 18 to 32 wandering in very, very difficult in concentric sort of circles for a while. But my first degree was in writing poetry from the University of New Mexico. I then left and just wandered into the mountains and was a fly fishing guide for 9 months, and then was called back just by that inner voice. And I got a degree in writing short story from a wonderful mentor, James Hanna, short story writer out of Texas. And James and I had a great relationship, and I got a master's degree out of A&M. And then I was going to write the great American novel, and both of those awful novels are somewhere in a trunk, somewhere in my garage.
Right.
And then the world crashed in, and I had to feed myself. So I was a waiter. I was a mason's apprentice. I was a technical writer. I was a telemarketer. Then I got married. I was a husband. And I just finally was like, you know what? Actually think the law would be kind of interesting because I'm a curious person. I seem to communicate well in writing, so let me go do that. And it's been a wonderful career. But like I said, if you're a true creative, if that's something that, the universe or God put in your heart, there's no ignoring it. It will irritate like a sand for an oyster until you actually pay attention to it.
I agree. It's funny. As a little girl, I used to say I wanted to be an author. I also, though, said I wanted to be an Olympic ice skater, so I'm not sure that I really knew what I wanted. But when I was going to college, my parents would not even consider allowing me to get a degree in something like creative writing because they said that was like getting a degree in waitressing, and they wouldn't even hear of it. So what's interesting is I have 2 majors, 2 minors, because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I've never used any of them actively in a position. I mean, I believe that all my education I have used somehow, but not actively like, oh, look, I went to school to be, and this is what I did. And I didn't start, my first book wasn't written and published until 4 years ago. Yeah. So, but I think it was always there. That idea that, I want to be an author. I think that would be really cool to be an author. So I understand that process for you. You talked about what's coming up next. So talk a little bit more. Tell us, what is this next book going to be about? And then do you have future designs on more books in this series?
I do. I've put myself, so one would call it aspirational and some would call it foolish. But when I designed Jake Fox, I thought about, again, this is sort of the way I've tried to break things down into being, take a huge project and try to make it into bite sizes.
Right.
So from a commercial aspect, if you're
Awesome. We can keep going. The recording kept going, so I'll just cut that piece out.
No problem. Sorry about that. I'm wondering if it's these.
It might be the
storms we're having.
I suspect it's a storm. So we were talking about about you going and creating the series, and you said from the commercial aspect, and then you were gone. So if you want to kind of start from there.
Sure, absolutely. So from the commercial aspect, when I was looking at it, whether being an author, or, either pitching to a publishing house or doing as an indie author, the most prolific and successful folks seem to have a series. Right. They seem to have, and that's because you want the flow through readers. You want the person to engage with the first book and then be unable not to figure out what happens next. And that's a commercial aspect of it. So I thought, well, a series should be, and I just picked this number, but it should be at least 9 books.
Okay.
So then from there, I thought, well, that sounds like a big project. And I thought, well, let's do it as 3 trilogies, 3 books that are all 3 trilogies with 3 books, and the 3 books within each trilogy would be connected over a longer story. And that's what I've started. So Ties That Blind is Rose's trial and Jake Fox. And then Don't Forsake Me continues with the same characters with Rose and Beth and everybody else. And the third will be the same, including Lilith, who is one of my favorite characters, the villain. And then I've got the other 2 trilogies planned out. They'll have the same characters around. Maybe some of them will be less of a focal point than others. But that's the main goal.
Yeah, I like that idea. I've never tried to write a series. I don't know. I feel like I get bored. I get done with my character and it's like, okay, well, I'm done with that. Now on to the next thing. So I would think that it's a little difficult to keep up with what you had them do or say or believe or think. Do you keep some, I've heard it called like a character Bible or whatever. Do you keep something like that so that you know where everybody is in time and space?
100%. So then it becomes an issue of logistics, and the character Bible, the pre-plot Bible, like how they reacted before, you have to keep track of and that kind of thing. And I do some of that by hand. I do have a spiral notebook just for quick cheat sheets. I can't get away from pen and pencil sometime. I'm almost 60, so I'm too old and I'm too tired to learn everything on the internet. But there are some great tools. And so I write using Scrivener, and all of both books are in it at the same time. So if I need to go search for something in the first book immediately to figure out how Beth did something, or whether or not she had long or short hair, or what color her fingernails were 4 days ago in the previous book, I can go do that pretty quickly. Right. And that's very helpful. But yeah, keeping track of everything becomes a bit of a puzzle, which can be fun in a way. It can be frustrating in a way, but it's never boring trying to make people consistent over a longer arc. Because when you think of a trilogy, and each of these books ends up being about 325 words, right? You're going to write 1,000 words with the same 12 characters. And so it does become a bit of a treasure hunt sometimes to make sure they're consistent. Yeah.
I know that when you have readers who become invested, they become invested enough that they know whether or not you're making mistakes, and then you'll hear about it. So you do have to be very careful that you are absolutely correct. You don't want them to come back and say, wait a minute. 4 days ago, he said he'd never done that before. And now you said that, he has a degree in it. That's
100%. Yeah. And one of the most terrifying things it would also be kind of fun, right, if they engage this way, but to have people in the second or the third book start to saying, well, Margie would never say that, or Hitch wouldn't do that. That's just out of character. That's both success and failure in the same coin.
Right. Yeah. Because you do want people to engage. And 100%. So that's fun. Yeah. But on the other hand, you really don't want them saying, oh no. So if you make your character do something that people are going to say they'd never do that, you now have to provide a reason. 100%. So that they can look and say, oh, this was a piece we didn't know, and now it makes sense. So
that is correct. Yeah. That is correct.
Especially when you're doing a character-driven type book, the characters matter so much because readers, at least readers like me, I become the character. And then
a lot of people do, yeah.
And I feel what the character's feeling. And so if something is really outside the norm, it takes me right out of the story. Because I'm surprised. It's like, oh, what happened? Why did that happen? Like that doesn't feel like it goes with the story. So you do have to be really careful that you're thinking all the way through with what is the motivation of this character? Why are they doing what they're doing? Would they really say that? And I've actually tried to write things before where one of my characters has said to me, I wouldn't do that. And I'm like, oh, but I need you to do it because it will be so easy then to wrap things up, right? And they're like, yeah, but I wouldn't, and I'm not going to. And it's like, fine, I'll come up with another way.
Very fun.
Do you have any other aspirations besides Jake Fox? Do you see yourself going beyond your 3 trilogies into something different? Or do you think that this is going to be what, like, your thrust?
I do have aspirations beyond that. So at some point, I'll probably retire being a lawyer. I hope that's an aspiration, right?
Right.
My father's 92. His mother lived to 105. So there's a potential for, say, I retire at the age of 70 to try to figure out what to do for 3 decades. And I really don't, although I do like Family Feud, I don't want to watch it for the rest of my life as my main goal, right?
Right.
It's entertainment, not sustenance. So the idea of being able to put together writing or offshoots, if you will, to certain books, or come up with new, either a new set of characters or put some of the same characters in a different place and see where they wander might be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll stop at 9, but I think I need to get to 9 to make that decision. But it's, creatively, I've already thought of ways to have offshoots, to have different ways to deal with people with different characters. And I think that would be a lot of fun.
Well, and because you have such strong character development, you can do that because we learn about a character, we grow close to a character. And then if you say, oh, by the way, this character is now, they've moved to New York City and something, and you're like, oh, I want to go there with them. So that is the good thing about doing a character driven. And I will repeat, I love the fact that this is a thriller that is this character driven, because it doesn't always work that way. A lot of times thrillers are just that. It's a thrill. You run from space to space to space, and you get to know the character very briefly, but it could really be almost anybody. And your characters are not that. Like, you become very, I don't know. I became very close to them and worried about them. And, we've got Rose in jail and I'm worried and there's things happening. And so, you did a really good job with the suspense part, but also with making me want to know more about your character. So that's it.
And I think part of that is the author has to engage with the character. You talk about your characters talking to you.
Yeah.
I've always thought that if you're not laughing or crying when you're writing, then your reader won't either. So that's a level of honesty and vulnerability that a lot of people won't engage with. They'll stick with the plot and just move on to the next target of what the book has to do instead of what the book can do.
Right. Oh, I love that. That is a good line. You probably need to put that on a T-shirt. So tell me, Michael, if someone wanted to get up with you, talk with you about Jake Fox, talk with you about your, your writing life, about, some of the things you do, what's the best way for them to get up with you?
Easiest way is to just email me. It's pretty simple. It's michael@michaelstockham.com. They can also contact me through a website, jakefoxthrillers.com. And the books are available on Amazon. They're easy to get. They're just Kindle. They're in Kindle Unlimited, etc. So it's pretty easy to engage with me, and I'm happy to visit with anybody that has questions or just wants a little bit of extra thought, or just somebody that wants to visit for a few minutes and decide whether or not they want to undertake writing a novel. Sometimes
Absolutely.
everybody just needs a bit of a friend to say, yeah, you should do this.
You should do it. Yeah, I agree. Well, guys, I will have all of the links in the show notes so that you'll be able to reach right out to Michael. Run out, grab the book. You're going to love it. You really are. And then once you're done loving it, go on to Amazon and review it, because as authors, we definitely need those reviews. And Michael, I want to thank you so much for being with me today.
It's been my pleasure and a blessing to visit. I'm so glad to be here, Terry. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.